Welcome to Beverly Unitarian Church. My name is Pat Hoffman. I am a worship associate and I am so glad to welcome you to worship today. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation of children, youths, and adults who celebrate a diversity of beliefs, striving always to make space for more. All of you is sacred. You are welcome here. Whatever your past or present is like, we invite you to walk into the future with us. Our minister is the Reverend David Schwartz. Today, however, we are fortunate and grateful to have as our speakers two members of our own congregation, Mark Townsend and Carolyn Wilbon, for the latest in our series of Patchwork services, where we invite members to share their experiences and insights on a spiritual theme, which, in a hopefully pivotal time in our local and national history, is Perspectives on Rice. We especially welcome visitors and hope you'll stay for the virtual coffee hour after the service on Zoom, using the link that will be shared at the end of the service. We look forward to the day, of course, when we will be able to meet you in person. Although we are currently physically distanced, we want to stay connected. So to get more involved, check out our Facebook page and our website, contact the office to sign up for our monthly newsletter and weekly email blasts on Friday, and to be connected to Reverend David for pastoral care. And now, let us join together in spirit and prepare our hearts and minds for worship.
You're not alone. I'm with you. I'm lonely too. There's not a song that can't be sung by two. A broken home, a broken heart, isolated and afraid. Open up, this is a raid. I wanna get it through to you that you're not alone. You're not alone. Every night I stand in your place, and every tear on every face tastes the same. A broken dream, a broken heart, isolated and afraid. Open up, this is a raid. I'm gonna get it through to you that you're not alone. An open hand, an open heart. There's no need to be afraid. Open up, this is a raid. I wanna get it through to you that you're not alone.
Please join me in saying the words for lighting our chalice this morning. We light our chalice, grateful for the love that we experience in this gathered community. May the flame light the way for all who seek such abundance. As I was choosing music for this service, as I always do, I was looking for music that would relate thematically to the theme of the service. And our hymn, Amazing Grace, was not my first choice. It's a beautiful hymn that I love, but what does it have to do with race? And then I remembered that throughout history, Amazing Grace has been a popular hymn, almost an anthem even, for civil rights. And I did a little research, and I was shocked at the story behind Amazing Grace. It was written by an Englishman, John Newton, who was born in London in 1725, the son of a Puritan mother and a stern ship-commanding father, who took him to sea at the age of 11, and of whom he eventually said, "I am persuaded that he loved me, but he seemed not willing that I should know it." As he grew into manhood, Newton was an outspoken atheist. He lived life as a libertine, and he was a slave trader. By the age of 20, Newton was busy running captured slaves from Africa to Charleston, South Carolina. So, of course, at this moment, I'm ready to toss this hymn out of consideration, right? But I read a little bit further and found that at the age of 23, Newton almost died in a storm at sea, and that is when he says he found his faith. He went on to be ordained as an Anglican priest and became an important voice in the English abolitionist movement. And that is when he wrote what he considered to be an autobiographical hymn, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. There's no direct link between Amazing Grace and the abolition of slavery in Britain, but the hymn was written by a man who was moved to speak out against something he himself had participated in, supported, and from which he had profited. In an essay, Newton said, "I hope it will always be a subject of humiliating reflection to me, that I was once an active instrument in a business at which my heart now shudders." So, it does seem somewhat fitting that his hymn has become for so many, including those fighting for civil rights, an anthem against all forms of social injustice. And perhaps a hymn to hear and sing with another layer of meaning as we reflect on race today.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. It is grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. Oh, when this flesh and heart fail, and life begins to cease. I shall travel through that shadowed vale with steady joy and peace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see.
This is the time in our service when we share joys and concerns of the past week as we light candles of community, that the living flames may represent the light and life in our hearts that we share with each other. We hope that by sharing with our spiritual family, our joys may be magnified and our burdens lessened. We take comfort that we are united in the vulnerability and community of sharing, and we help to care for our spiritual family by holding their joys and sorrows as well as our own in our hearts and minds. This morning, I light one candle for all of us, and I invite you now to share any joys and concerns in the chat, being mindful that the chat is public. If you wish to share and connect in silence, type I in the chat box, signifying the two fingers that we raise in church. I was really struck by the quote from Madeleine L'Engle that I used in the notice for this Sunday's Patchwork service, Because we fail to listen to each other's stories, we are becoming a fragmented human race. A powerful thought in a few words. Because we fail to listen to each other's stories, we are becoming a fragmented human race. The reading today, however, is from Rachel Naomi Raymond. She says, "The most basic and powerful way to connect to another person is to listen. Just listen. Perhaps the most important thing we can ever give another is our attention. A loving silence often has far more power to heal and to connect than the most well-intentioned words. In this culture, the soul and the heart too often go homeless. Listening creates a holy silence. When you listen generously to people, they can hear the truth in themselves, and in the silence of listening, you can know yourself in everyone. Eventually, you may be able to hear in everyone and beyond everyone the unseen singing softly to itself and you. When we haven't the time to listen to each other's stories, we seek out experts to tell us how to live. The less time we spend together at the kitchen table, the more how-to books appear in the stores and on our bookshelves. But reading such books is a very different thing than listening to someone's lived experience. Because we have stopped listening to each other, we may even have forgotten how to listen, stopped learning how to recognize meaning and fill ourselves from the ordinary events in our lives. We have become solitary, readers and watchers, rather than sharers and participants. So this is not our first patchwork service, but it is the first patchwork we've ever done remotely. And remote services, like everything else, are a blessing and a curse, right? The blessing is that you can watch together with us at 10:30 on Sundays and share with each other in the chat and the Zoom coffee hour. Or you can also choose to watch later when the kids aren't running wild, or you haven't had your coffee yet, or you're just not centered and ready to really listen. The curse is that we're not together, around the kitchen table or in our sanctuary, sharing our energy and holding space with each other in person. So the worship committee is especially grateful to these three members and all of our remote service speakers that they are willing to share themselves from the void of their own homes. Please use this time, whenever you're listening to the service, to really listen. And then maybe take just a little extra time to share your gratitude and your feedback with our speakers, either at the Zoom coffee hour or a quick email or a phone call. And now, on to our marvelous speakers today.
Good morning. Mark Townsend here. Race. I've never really had a problem with race. I don't see people in a color array. I see people as human beings in basically everything I've ever done. I grew up in Inglewood on the south side. I grew up in the 70s. There were no real big issues with race when I was growing up. There were no issues with race in high school or in the Marine Corps. There were no issues as far as I was concerned with race. Dealing with it today, it's sensationalized in the news more than need be, if you ask me. So, when you speak of race, you're trying to figure out how uncomfortable or comfortable you feel, how this person is supposed to view you being a black man, a black woman, a white woman. I'm sorry, I see people as humans. It's easier that way. I can deal with you easier as a human being. You can be a self-righteous and unholy human being. And I don't have to sit there and see you as racial. Never will, never have. I spent 5.5 years in the Marine Corps where I never had to deal with people of color or a racial situation. Some of my best friends in the Marines were of different races. I had one guy who was from Alaska. I had another guy from New York whose father taught him to hate black people, but he came to love me as a brother in arms because we fought and served together. We exercised together. We fought through transitional situations together. Racial situations at my job, I don't have them. Inmate, officer alike, I don't have them. I treat everybody the same. You cross me, you get on my nerves, well, you get to see my bad side. If you are lucky enough to, I don't know, be trained by me or come under my wing, then I would train you as I was trained. I don't care about your race. I was trained in a manner that says I'm going to get the job done. I'm trained in a manner that says I'm going to show you how to do this. So I'm not worried about what the race is. Calling it race is basically a way of saying, all right, I want to finish first. In my humble opinion, we want to call it a race. Then how about we don't worry about who finishes first? How about we worry about who finishes together? How about we worry about who finishes at all? If I'm going first, then how am I helping the people behind me? If I'm behind you, then I believe at that point I should be pushing you forward so that you're better than me. Whether you're black, white, or whatever. I don't care about race. I joined Beverly Unitarian not because it was a black church or a white church. I believed that it was a church I could go to and find myself comfortable with anybody and everybody there. I've been to black churches and found them to be lacking in what I felt I needed to learn. I've been to Catholic churches and found that to be a little more stringent about what their rules are versus what you're trying to teach. At Beverly Unitarian, I have learned that race does not matter. There's love in that room. There are people who see us for who we are, not for what we bring to the table or what we can give the church or what I have or don't have. There is no, I'm going to come dressed in my Sunday best, because we believe, as the Lord has always said, you come as you are. There's no reason to buy a $200 suit to come to church and wear it for one day. There's no reason to buy a $400 hat to come to church and wear it for one day. It's not about that. Race does not depict that. We, as a church, does not depict that. We show up because we want to be there as a collective, black, white, and other. I look around that room and find not black faces and white faces. I find everybody of the human race. And I like to think that that is the type of place I like to be in. In our small community, that is the world I'd like to live in. Not a world where we're fighting to see if Black Lives Matter is, this big stepping stone of a resolution or revolution for that matter. I'm not looking for acceptance. I'm looking for that camaraderie that we have. I know I'm accepted because I'm not bringing negativity to the church, just like I try not to bring negativity in my life at all. I have many friends of many races, of many colors, of many backgrounds, of many sizes, shapes, and likes and dislikes. It's not what makes me. What makes me is the fact that I can get along with anybody of any race. The question is, are you willing to get along with somebody who's willing to put all that aside and see you for the human being that you are? I see you for the human being that you are. I thank you for being the person that you are. I shake your hand. I give you a hug. I feed you if I have it. I take you in if it need be. But I don't see you as black or white or Asian or Indian or Hindu or African. I see you as human. You walk on two legs, you bleed red just like I do. Which means you get my vote. So, I didn't grow up with a whole lot of problems with race. Other than the fact that in this thing we call the human race, I want to make sure we all finish together.
Beginning to think that I'm wasting time. I don't understand the things I do. The world outside looks so unkind, but I'm counting on you to carry me through. Oh, give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I wanna get lost in your rock and roll and drift away. Give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I wanna get lost in your rock and roll and drift away.
When my mind is free, you know a melody can move me. When I'm feeling blue, guitar's coming through to soothe me.
Thanks for the joy that you've given me. I hope that you know I believe in your song. The rhythm, the rhyme, the harmony, they help me along. They're keeping me strong. Oh, give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I wanna get lost in your rock and roll and drift away. Give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I wanna get lost in your rock and roll and drift away. Give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I wanna get lost in your rock and roll and drift away.
When asked to share on the topic of race, my first thought was, my God, that is so heavy. And I immediately felt the weight of it. The it that is so big, it would take up my entire 5 minutes to barely scratch the surface of it. My second thought was to George Floyd, the latest atrocity and blatant disrespect of Black lives to make the news. And I wondered if this would finally be the event that ignited sustainable change. It seemed, with the immediate global unrest and the worldwide protests that ensued, that this would be our shot heard round the world, similar to that opening round that began the Revolutionary War. Yet here we are, 3 months later, and our protesting is about statues, gun control, and defunding police departments. Nothing on the underlying institutions that perpetuates so many injustices to Blacks. As Americans, we are tired, no doubt about it. Depending on the location and the level of involvement, we are all suffering from varying degrees of tired, and the weight of it is significant. There's already so much going on in our country right now. There's the apparent fragility of our entire government system, currently being tested and exploited by rampant political abuse and polarized public servants. There's also the uncontrolled ravage of COVID-19, which has infected over 9 million and claimed over 162,000 American lives so far, with no cohesive thought or reasonable federal response to be seen. Americans are having to decide between physical safety of quarantine or a brief outing to abate the depression of the never-ending isolation. Parents are having to choose whether to reluctantly send their children to schools with no safety assurances or keep their jobs. Teachers are being asked to lose their jobs or possibly lose their lives. It's heavy stuff and it's hard. My brain hurts just trying to think about it for even 5 minutes. And still, on top of all that is race, and the fact that we still have not yet exposed the roots of systemic racism to the sun. The roots being so deep and so deeply entrenched and intertwined in various institutions that they are a part of what defines America and us as Americans. This internal struggle only adds to the weight of being a human being at this particular point in time, and I do not see an end. The weight of the weight is becoming unbearable for more and more of us every day. And for some of us, recent events have only added a ton of bricks to an already never-ending, overwhelming burden. It's like it's much worse than it has ever been. Could that be true? I say yes. Yes, it is true. Why? Because the weight of the weight gets heavier and heavier each day, each month, each decade, and each generation. There's a reason why there are charts defining healthy weight ranges. Too much weight for too long will kill you. For those of us who have been carrying the weight of institutional racism on our backs through the generations, we know that weight is sometimes lightened when some of the load is temporarily transferred to a well-meaning piece of legislation, the Civil Rights Act of 1866, or the 14th Amendment in 1868, or a well-meaning social program, the Voting Rights Act, Fair Housing Act, or even a well-positioned elected official, Carol Moseley Braun, Barack Obama. However, because the root causes are not directly and thoroughly addressed at the institutional level, the weight always comes back. And when it does, it is harder and harder to bear. Why? It's never fully lifted. So there's only limited recovery, never enough time for healing. And each time the load is reapplied, the back, already in a fragile state, bends just a little more. And it's harder to see the hope that lies ahead as one's vision is directed more and more toward the ground. And yet, we continue to hear, just wait. Martin Luther King spoke of it in his letter from a Birmingham jail in 1963. He said, "For years now, I've heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never." He wrote these words in response to a public statement of concern issued by 8 white religious leaders in the South who called the activities of the time unwise and untimely. Just wait, they said. Now is not the right time. I asked, why is this still a question in 1963? Recently, we heard the United States Attorney General say, "I think it would be an oversimplification to treat the problem as rooted in some deeply seated racism, generally inflecting our police departments. It seems far more likely that the problem stems from a complex mix of factors, which can be addressed with more focused attention over time." I ask, why is this still a question in 2020? Going back to that shot heard round the world, the events leading up to the Revolutionary War began with the Royal Proclamation of 1763, which angered the colonists because they felt they were being unreasonably controlled by England. A series of other events and acts eventually led to the Revolutionary War in 1775, a mere 12 years from anger to war. The Emancipation Proclamation was issued January 1st, 1863. But 100 years later, as it was when Dr. King wrote his response, we should still wait. The Civil Rights Act of 1871 was specifically to prohibit ethnic violence against blacks, In 2020, 150 years later, we should still wait. The Civil Rights Act of 1875 was designed to protect all citizens in their civil and legal rights, providing for equal treatment, yada, yada, yada. 145 years later, we should still wait. I could go on and on, but the point is, none of this has resulted in a United States of America because the decision-making faction in America does not want to expose all of the roots of systemic racism. To do so would mean addressing mass incarceration, lack of access to health care, barriers to employment, housing discrimination, higher poverty rates, education disparities, to name a few. But it would also mean empathizing. It would mean accepting responsibility and apologizing earnestly. It would mean commitment and understanding that it could take generations for Americans to trust. Think about it. It takes 2 to 3 years for a small business to become profitable, 5 to 10 to become successful, but banks still lend money. America would have to invest that time and plan for the lean years in order to realize the payoff of a highly successful, healthy, educated, productive society. Part of this means continuing to forgive the youth for the looting, for the violence, because they know no other way of surviving, while continuing to supply support and provide the tools for eventual success. In 1968, the Kerner Commission reported that our nation is moving toward two societies, one black, one white, separate and unequal. Discrimination and segregation have long permeated much of American life. They now threaten the future of every American. This was in 1968. The weight of the weight will kill America. My hope and prayer is that we as an entire country finds the strength to face who we are head on, the courage to look honestly at the unfair and discriminatory systems that have been built and allowed to continue for so long unchecked. We should not be afraid to dismantle a broken system. We should look forward to a clean American image, one that truly represents and respects all of its citizens and residents. I truly believe we can eradicate the roots of systemic racism before our backs break from the weight of the 400-year wait. Thank you.
When I wake up in America, I see my neighbors there with every type of clothes and shoes, hats and skin and hair, every fine belief and custom, scores of songs from who knows where. When I wake up in America, our stories fill the air. Wake up, despierta. Wake up, despierta. Wake up in America. The light in the harbor shines for us all. When I wake up, I see the kids playing happily swaying. Good to be staying in a place like this, with a face like this. When I wake up in America, put away my fear, and I love my neighbor as myself. And I say, I'm glad that you're here. We have found ourselves together in a land we dream could be. When we wake up in America, everybody will be free. Wake up, despierta. Wake up, despierta. Wake up, please, America. The light in the harbor shines for us all. When I wake up, when you wake up, when we wake up in America.
We extinguish the chalice here, that it might shine on in our hearts. May it guide our path as we leave this place. May it guide our way until we are together again.